Welcome to Managing Through Crisis, the weekly webcast featuring faculty from Harvard Business School sharing insights on how to navigate through the COVID-19 crisis. Each year for the past 20 years, the communications firm Edelman Worldwide conducts a study on trust to gauge consumers' trust in the media, government, and business. The 2020 report, published in January, revealed that 56% of respondents believe that capitalism, as it exists in the world today, does more harm than good, highlighting a growing sense of inequity and unfairness around the world. Today, we're fortunate to have Rebecca Henderson joining us. She is the creator of a course in the MBA program called Reimagining Capitalism, and she has a book called Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire. So we'll discuss what that means for firms in the age of the global pandemic. Rebecca, thanks for joining me.
Brian, thank you for inviting me to be here.
It's a rainy day in Boston, and we'll hope that the rain doesn't interfere with our signal. There's so many people that are on Zoom conducting meetings this way, and I think that the infrastructure that we have hopefully will hold true for us. So we've got questions that were sent in yesterday from some of the folks that follow us on social media. We're going to get to some of those, but just reflecting back on this Edelman Trust Barometer. I'm wondering if you think that sentiment, that 56% sentiment of people who think that capitalism is doing more harm than it is good in the world today, do you think that that's justified?
I think there are very real reasons so many people are angry at capitalism. I believe it's one of the greatest inventions of the human race, and I think that without capitalism, we're not going to solve the problems that we face. But I think for many people, capitalism is not currently working. In the midst of this pandemic, we can see that the fact that so many people don't have enough savings to carry them through a month or 2 months is an indictment of the fact that we're not sharing the wealth. In the last 20 years, the economy grew significantly, but almost all that growth went to the top 10%, the richest 10% of Americans. And so I think if you're a regular person saying, wait, this isn't quite working in the way it's supposed to, is an absolutely reasonable response.
You think, given the situation that we've seen unfolding around the world, we've seen this unfolding first in China, which has a communist system, and then we've seen it spread to places in Europe and now to the United States and other places where they have a different system. Is capitalism a help or a hindrance in the face of a situation like this?
So capitalism is so many different things. When it's firms putting their heads down and trying to make as many masks as they can, as fast as they can, and it's fantastic. Capitalism is an incredible source of innovation and drive, but there are all kinds of problems that it can't solve. What the pandemic is showing us is that for capitalism to work for us, it needs to be balanced by a strong, transparent, effective, responsive government. I mean, one of the things that's making me absolutely crazy at the moment is hearing about the states bidding against each other for vital medical equipment. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's going on? The federal government should be saying, okay, we're going to lay our hands on everything that's out there. Then we're going to parcel it up to the states. We're the federal government, so we can drive these prices down. We won't let fly-by-night distributors jack up prices against us. And if you had the government balancing business, if they were working in partnership to really address these problems, I think we'd be in a much better place. The CEOs I know are working incredibly hard. They're driving their firms as hard as they can. But we've become comfortable with a world in which government is really a weak, second-rate partner rather than a force that can bring out the best in capitalism.
We're certainly seeing some examples as this thing has unfolded of even micro examples. The two gentlemen in the southern part of the country of the United States who bought up all of the hand sanitizers and the products and tried to sell those on Amazon. And fortunately, quickly, I think Amazon took that storefront down. But I think some people might look at that and say, well, that's just capitalism. They're just practicing, what good business people do. What's wrong about that statement?
So capitalism, as I said, I think is an amazing force for good, but it has to be bounded. There have to be rules. And one of the rules should be, in a pandemic, you do not profiteer on your fellow citizens.
Sounds like a good
Another rule should be, just to take something at random, you don't throw pollution out the window of your factory at no cost. I mean, at the moment, we have a capitalism which is heating the planet, which is pumping out greenhouse gas pollution in enormous quantities with almost no controls. That's not a fault of capitalism per se. If you tell a business person that you can burn coal and it's cheap and yeah, it's dirty and it'll kill millions of people, but hey, what's to worry? Then they'll go ahead and use the cheapest fuel source. So again, I think so often when people say they're mad at capitalism, what they're mad at is an uncontrolled, out of balance, capitalism at any cost. And that's not a good kind of capitalism. There are many different kinds of capitalism. There's a rapacious, we will do anything to make money, we don't care kind of capitalism. And then there's a kind of capitalism that we used to have in the US in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and we did pretty well then, where firms took care of their employees, where there was a partnership with government. It was a Republican administration that passed environmental laws that could control firms. We had minimum wage legislation, and minimum wage has hardly been raised over time. This morning I was teaching a course on Handy, which is an online platform which matches people who need their houses cleaned with cleaners. And they pay over the odds, but they don't offer sick pay or benefits or anything. Just, $17 or whatever it is by the hour. And now that the pandemic is here, people are turning to them and saying, what have you done? Your cleaners have no protection, they have no savings, they have no health care. And I think it's legitimate for Handy to say like, whoa, wait a moment. We were just playing within the existing rules. I think what this pandemic is showing us is we really need strong rules if capitalism is to live up to its full potential, which is amazing.
One of the things you've written a lot about, and we've talked about a case that you wrote on Walmart not long ago, that really underscored the fact that the kinds of sustainability efforts that companies go to are not done out of altruistic reasons. In the truest spirit of capitalism, they're done because they're good for the firm, they're good for employees, they're good for customers. As you look at the Walmart example, are there other examples like that you can think of where companies could really apply some of those same virtues to the situation that we're seeing today?
Tomorrow I'm teaching a case called Mercadona, which is a Spanish retailer, one of the most successful firms in Spain. And for many years, Mercadona has prided itself in putting its employees at the heart and center of its business model. So this is a grocery store, nothing particularly special, but they pay over the odds. People have stable jobs. The stores are closed on Sundays. People have a lot of discretion over their work. They're promoted up inside the firm. These are classically good jobs. And I think what we're seeing at this moment of crisis is those firms who took the time and trouble to make sure that they were treating their employees with dignity and respect, that they built business models where the employee was at the heart of the business model, giving better service, creating ideas as to how to run the business better. At Mercadona, they were amongst the first to introduce the little barcodes in checkout. They were amongst the first to set up the supermarket with a bakery store and a fish store. They are amongst the cheapest stores in Spain because the employees decide what products to carry, making sure they're what the customer wants, but it's a very limited range. So the whole structure of the store is working in partnership with incredibly empowered, decently paid employees. And so firms that have set themselves up like that, they're able to respond to this moment of panic and to this moment of pandemic in a very different way, because they have levels of trust and engagement inside the organization that allow them to be much more innovative, much more creative, to say to everyone in the firm, okay, let's all take a pay cut. Let's see what we can do to take care of our people, to take them through. They have relationships with their customers, which mean that when many customers are looking for ways to support small businesses, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the small businesses that really took trouble and really connected with them. They're going to go to the small businesses which are well run and are doing a little bit extra.
We had several questions from our listeners asking about sustainability and the role that that sustainability can play in a situation like this. Do you see a connection between companies that have found a way to sort of invest in sustainability, have a better chance or maybe a better prospects of how to manage through a crisis like this?
So I want to acknowledge this is a really tough time. There are firms that have seen their revenue go to zero. It doesn't matter whether they're sustainable or not, it's still super hard. And there are firms that are producing products that people need right now that may not be sustainably managed and are doing great guns. I do think at the edge, at the margin, those firms who have really built the trust of their customers and their employees are doing better. I've spoken to a few CEOs and they've talked about the incredible commitment of their employees, people working 3 shifts in difficult conditions, really trying to be in service to customers. And I think that's the result of years of investment in doing the right thing, in having a purpose beyond only making money. Nothing wrong with making money, but to have a purpose beyond that as well, I think is often paradoxically a better way to make money. Sometimes when you show up and you say to your suppliers, well, we're just here to make money and any chance we can, we'll screw you. It's not a great way to make money. So for me, sustainability is not about some airy-fairy, we have to do good in the world, although I do think we have to do good in the world. It's about acknowledging that a business is part of a much broader system, and that taking care of everyone in that system is good for business.
A lot has been made in the United States in particular about the Production Defense Act. And, why hasn't the president, been more forceful in telling companies that they needed to change their operations to support fighting the crisis? I think the flip side of that is, why haven't more companies stepped forward and sort of, just done the right thing and kind of moved in that direction? And maybe they have. I mean, I think we're all getting different information from different sources. But just your thoughts on something like that, as we think about the role of capitalism in society, do you need a Production Defense Act, or shouldn't firms just know by now that they need to be in this for something bigger than just themselves?
I don't know enough about the details of the Production Defense Act to know whether it's the answer. I think it is the case that what we need right now are firms stepping up and saying, let's work together to solve this crisis. I think that's super hard for an individual firm to do. So what needs to happen is for groups of firms to step up. Some of that's certainly happening in the pharmaceuticals and biotech. I know that firms there are working absolutely as hard as they can to find a vaccine and to find better tests. And they tell me, like, at the moment, we're not thinking about the boundary of the firm. We're just working together to make this work. It's, we're not worrying about the legal details. It's just all about human health. So I know that's happening in some parts of the economy. I think that the government could really help encourage that. That in the war, the government said, look, we will buy what you produce, but we won't buy it at an extortionate price. We'll buy it at a reasonable price. And we'll support you all in working together. And, Lockheed, you can build planes, and General Motors, you can build tanks, and we'll sort of lick this thing together. And I think what we need is some rediscovery of that sense of communal effort. I think it's tough to expect individual firms to do it because, look, this is hard. Suppose I'm running a small business. I want to take care of the people who work for me, but I may only have a month's worth of cash. And if I just give it to everyone while we're all sitting at home, how am I ever going to reopen? How am I going to pay for that first month once we're back at work? So there are businesses in very tough places. But I do think there are firms who have resources, who have the capacity. If we can find a way to help them work together, we could make an enormous difference.
You've spoken in the past, and I think in your class, Reimagining Capitalism, one of the themes that runs through that is that of conscious capitalism. We had a viewer write in and ask if you would just talk about some of the virtues of conscious capitalism.
So let me talk first about what it is. I think it's easier if I talk about an actual human being rather than in general. So I want to talk about my friend Erik Osmundsen, who is CEO of a garbage company, a Norwegian garbage company called Norsk Gjenvinning. And when Erik became CEO of this company, he discovered that the entire Norwegian waste industry was corrupt, that people were lying about the waste they were disposing. For example, they were taking a hazardous medical waste, relabeling it and shipping it to Africa as ordinary household waste. They were dumping chemicals into the fjords. This is in Norway, dumping toxic chemicals into the fjords, and of course, taking a cut. And no one was enforcing the laws in the industry. And Erik had got into the garbage business because he thought it could really make a difference to the problems of the world. So he was a little bit starry-eyed. He thought really doing effective recycling was one of the most effective things we could do as a human race to make sure that we have a livable planet. But he was also a really sharp business person because he thought there was lots of room in the garbage industry to introduce recycling and to take it to a bigger scale and to really make a killing. He's a very savvy business person. And when he discovered it was corrupt, he faced a choice. I mean, he could have walked away. That would have been much easier. He would have got his money back. It would have been fine. Or he could stay and go public about what was going on and try and transform the entire industry. And for me, conscious capitalism is the decision to stay and fight. It doesn't mean giving up on financial returns. Erik had a very clear sense of how he was going to make money, but it took enormous courage to go to the press, to go to the TV and say, look, this industry is run by organized crime. He got death threats. His children had to have armed guards at school. For a while, it was touch and go. When I ask him now, though, if he regrets what he did, he says, not in a million years. Of course, it was difficult, and I didn't realize it was going to be that bad. But, they've turned the whole industry around. And not completely, nothing is perfect, no fairy stories here, but they have made an enormous difference. And he's built a profitable, growing business using modern technology to drive recycling right across Scandinavia. I mean, so that's what conscious capitalism is for me. It doesn't mean that we all sit around and meditate. It means that we bring both our sort of business side of our minds and the part of us that really cares about our families and our community and wants to make a difference and builds a business that can do both. I know.
That sounds great. Sounds great to me. One more question for you before we let you go, Rebecca. If you have sort of one thought that you want to leave people with today as they're thinking about their firm and what they might be able to do in this situation, is there sort of one idea from reimagining capitalism that you think should really resonate with folks?
I think this moment has made us aware how dependent we are on each other. We have at our best a feeling of community and solidarity that I think we haven't had for some time. And so if I were a business person and I was thinking, what's on the other side? How do we build this back better? I would think of two things. The first is, how do I build a business that at the very least doesn't harm other people, but a business where people are proud to work, products I am proud to sell, customers I am delighted to work with. That's the kind of business I want to build. I think there's a lot of research to suggest that will make you more productive, more creative, and more innovative. And now is the time. Now when people are so emotionally raw, you can really show that you're in it for the long term, and that you care about your employees and you want to make a contribution to this amazing world in which we're in. And the second thing I would take in is look around at the society. Let's build a society where we take care of the most vulnerable. That's a political problem. But let's make sure we have a political process which isn't so full of special interest money that ordinary people's voices can't be heard. Let's get the money out of politics. Let's make it democratic and responsible. I'm not talking politics, I'm talking civics. Let's have a political process that works for all, so that we have a healthcare system that works for all of us, so that we have minimum wage that takes care of people. I think business has an amazing, amazing voice to play in that conversation. So let's build it back better. Let's build a truly amazing society, which we could do.
It's a great parting thought. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity.